Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate you holding this hearing. This has been an issue ongoing for, I think, quite a while now. And before I do get to my questions, I just would like to make a few remarks as to this issue. This is very important to me, and particularly with the avenue that I'm going to take, particularly to our veterans. I have been concerned our veterans are not receiving the highest quality of mental health care at many VA facilities. And tragically, in February, Iraq and Army veteran Richard Miles of Des Moines, Iowa, committed suicide. And I was deeply troubled by reports from his family, from his friends, and both local and national media outlets which claimed that Richard may not have received adequate mental health care from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that led me to ask the Inspector General to look into Central Iowa VA's mental health care programs, the care that Richard received for his PTSD and their management of his particular case. That was in February. It is now June. And this has been so deeply troubling to me. I would note that the office of the VA IG has told me on multiple occasions that they would get the report to me. Again, I requested this report in February. It's now June. They told me they would have the results to me first in April. And after receiving no response, we reached out again, and then they said, we'll have it to you in May. We reached out again at the beginning of this week, still have not received an answer. So it is very frustrating and absolutely unacceptable that it has taken so long. We have many veterans that seek assistance with our VA systems, whether it's for mental health care or other types of care. Especially with our mental health care, we need to ensure that they're receiving timely and adequate care. And in this case, I have no idea whether that happened or not because we have not gotten a response. So as a senator, I do have the responsibility to ensure that those veterans are receiving adequate care and that we're living up to the promises that we have made to these veterans as a nation. So the VA and its IG need to come forward with information that will provide Iowa veterans a better understanding of the adequacy and management of their mental health care. And those programs. So while I'm in a position right now that I can no longer do anything for Richard, I am in a position where I can do something for many of our other veterans that are seeking mental health care to help with these invisible wounds. And this could be of any era of veteran. But the only way that we can do this is to ensure that we have efficient and motivated IGs, and especially one in the VA that can be held accountable. And thank you for listening to that. But with that, I would also like to ask a couple of questions. And Mr. Horowitz, you wrote in your testimony that one of the Council of IG's most important responsibilities is to submit recommendations of individuals to the appropriate appointing authority. And would you recommend Mr. Griffin to be the IG for the VA? Have you had any discussions with the White House on a formal nomination process for the VA IG spot?
I have had conversations, and my understanding is the chair of the panel and the panel itself that we've set up has also had discussions in the sense of recommending candidates for the position. When I say discussions, again, they're usually one-way discussions. It's us recommending candidates to them.
And have you seen any responses, particularly with Mr. Griffin? Is he a candidate for the position? Would he be?
I do not know if he's a candidate, and I have not gotten feedback on where things are as to the candidates we've recommended.
Okay, and therein lies some of the problems. I think is that maybe recommendations are made, but they're not acted on. That I'm not sure of. I just know that the VA does need an IG and somebody that will be responsive to these types of situations. And also, Mr. Horowitz and, of course, Ms. Bryan and Mr. Epstein, Last year, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff and now the VA Chief of Staff, Rob Neighbors, said that the VA was crippled by a corrosive culture and poor leadership, which negatively impacts the delivery of care at VA. And considering this White House report, VA scandals with systemic wait time falsification, we could go on and on. And it's on the GAO's high-risk list. In your opinion, why hasn't the White House prioritized nominating and getting through the Senate a full-time IG? Are there areas we need to consider?
I just can't speak to why they haven't prioritized it. It seems so obvious to me that it should be a priority. I would, in my written testimony, I gave some examples of how we've had our own experiences, very negative experience with the acting IG. So I would hope that they find someone else to fill that position.
And I can't speak specifically about what the president's state of mind, but I think there are two things that might shed some light on some of those questions you asked. The first is, and I'd be happy to kind of submit, additional statement on this. The president, I believe, under the Vacancies Act, could, he has done so with the National Labor Relations Board, he could put an IG into a position which wouldn't have to be past that 210-day timeline, and then wouldn't have to be a deputy. So I think the president is ready, willing, and able. Maybe not willing, but has the ability to put someone there. And so it's a question of the pressure to do that. Why do you do that for certain boards that may be politically beneficial, but you don't do that when it comes to inspector generals? I think the other thing is a lot of what has been discussed is the fact that there may be delays in appointments through that vetting process. But as part of that vetting process, whether it's the Office of Presidential Personnel or the President's Council, get background checks on nominees from the FBI. So one thing that if my organization tried to do this, we would be stonewalled, but hopefully the Senate wouldn't be, is the Senate could request information, whether the records are kept confidential, but the number of records aren't, of how many background checks were done for potential nominees to the Department of Veterans Affairs. How many background checks were done for potential nominees to the Export-Import Bank. Then you can determine how, in fact, willing was the president to consider nominations. If you can't get the facts from SIGI, you can get information concerning how many potential nominees were actually considered, and that could give some kind of sunlight to whether the president took seriously the need to actually put a permanent inspector general to prevent a lot of these problems that you discussed, Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would say that of all of the IG positions that are vacant, this one literally has lives writing on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I totally agree. I mean,